I cheat to make colorful line art. Have lines. Very important. Duplicate the layer with the lines. Set the top one to overlay and the bottom one to multiply. Pick a light color for the multiply layer. I like light orange tones, but you can get crazy with it. Now pick a darker color for the overlay layer. I usually use a few different colors to keep things interesting. Color that bad boy however you want. Now your line art will just adapt to it. Follow for more lazy artist tips.
3 tips that will improve your skin rendering, plus bonus tip at the end. First, add an ambient light, so make a new layer, pick a color of your ambient light, and paint it in the shadow areas where the bounce light hits. Next, add subsurface scattering. Make a new hard light or overlay layer, pick a saturated orange color and paint it on the transition between light and shadow. Finally, add some details. I like to add skin texture, so make a new layer, pick a lighter color and paint it in and then erase it a little bit. And my brushes are free on my Patreon. I like to put it in the areas like highlights, transition areas, shadow areas and bounce light, and bonus tip in the description.
Here's the key to drawing the human head. You have to break it down into planes. This way you'll be able to understand the underlying structure and you'll be able to draw the head from any angle with any light source. This is how you can practice it. So find a reference that you like, whether it's like interesting light composition or an interesting face shape, interesting face angle, and then use this free 3D model that has this interactive light. I show you guys how it works and where to find it on yesterday's video. You want to replicate your reference into this 3D model. And then what you gotta do is break down the original reference into planes by using the 3D model as a reference. I hope that's not too jumbly. For this study, I was specifically trying to improve my lighting, so I also broke down where the light source comes from. And then after I've done that, I draw by using my little study. So I've been doing lighting studies a lot because it's something I want to improve on. It's one of my weaknesses, and I'm actually running a Discord workshop on Saturday, which is tomorrow, on lighting studies in movies. So if you guys want to check that out, my Discord will be in the comments. But yes, that's it for today's art tip. I hope it has helped some of you guys, and I'll be back tomorrow for my series and give you guys another tip.
Something that a lot of artists forget when they are making facial expressions is that they can vary the size of the pupil to make the expression much more intense. Check it out. Let's say that I have a couple of very angry eyes right here. Now we have a very angry character right here, and the only thing that we are missing is the iris of the character, and we can just put them right here in the center. Not bad, right? Our character looks angry enough, but check out what happens if we make the irises much smaller. Check out how much more intense the one with the small irises look. If you like tips like this, check out digitalpaintingmaster.com, where I put everything that I know about being an artist.
Here's a super simple trick that you can try in your paintings. I'm gonna draw a simple rock. This is like my rough sketch. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill that in, complete silhouette with white. Then I'm gonna duplicate it and I'm gonna fill in that other silhouette with black. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a texture brush because I wanna get some livelihood into the lighting, erase out all of the light. And this is where you can have like a really graphic sort of approach to lighting. So of course you have to keep a light source in mind, but what you're basically doing is you're only concerning yourself with black and white value. And so you're thinking very graphically, allowing yourself to handle one problem at the time. So at this point, I'm just worried about the graphic nature of this lighting. And now what I can do, and this is fun, I can lock that layer, or I can create a clipping mask if I want to, and I can sort of fill in that complete shadow color with any value and color that I want. And now here's where the magic happens. As soon as I start painting in the layer underneath, which will be my light layer basically, now I'm going to add colors that relate to the light. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to separate light from shadow much easier than if I had to do everything manually. So now I can just focus on having fun with adding some color variety and nice brush strokes, nice shapes, and that's all I have to worry about. Right, so as soon as you've done something like this, you can do this in a much more complex way, and that's what I wanted to show you, because I can make something like this turn into something like this. And that's just purely because I'm separating light from dark, and I'm keeping that separation as best as I can because it will help the clarity of my image. And so that's something I definitely want you to try. If you want to get better, or if you want to have an easier time just creating a clear picture and you want to separate light from dark, start with a black and white painting, really carve out everything there graphically, and then just fill those areas in.
Instead of trying to find that center line of the face, which is what I used to do and what you're usually told to do, instead what I'm going to do, this might sound crazy, is I'm going to find the side plane of the head by applying some nice little zigzag forms there. Like this. And some ways you can think about the rhythms here too, is you can imagine these curvatures on the plane. And these are going to create some nice shorthands for you. And then you can take all this rhythms, split it in half like that. And lo and behold, plane change, nose, mouth, head. Crazy. It's the head.
Here's how to achieve a more painterly look. If you want to get a little bit more of a painterly approach and a painterly feeling, what you can actually do is you can end the drawing prematurely, and from then on just use it as a framework to start adding in shape, just using a lasso shape. So instead of trying to do it with the brush, I would try and define shapes with the lasso tool. I'm going to add the silhouette of this, and then within that silhouette, I'm just going to start adding in all the shapes I feel should be here based on, you know, the local color, the value of the hair, the skin tone, the eyes, and a bit of the shading and some lighting. But I'm purely going to do it with shapes and completely opaque colors. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just using the lasso tool to just start drawing in some shapes. Nothing else. Now what this allows you to do as well, it gives you, or it trains you at least, to be a little bit more comfortable or confident with the sort of the form you're putting down on paper. Not always relying on exact reference or, you know, trying to copy another artist. Just trying to find your own shapes that you find really pleasing and working with that. Now what I could do, of course, to add a little bit of interest is just use a soft brush to vary up my skin tone a little bit. Right, and then I'll use a multiply layer just to start finding my shadows. And then often from time to time, what a good test is to do is once you have your initial shapes in, or most of your initial shapes, what you can do is just turn off your line layer and see if everything still reads. And that's how you can sort of gauge if what you're doing with the shapes is actually working. Because if you have good shapes in place based on a rough drawing, the shapes themselves should stand on their own without the drawing, and that's how you're going to make your painting feel more painterly. And then from here we can start adding halftones and highlights. And you'll start to notice that at some point I won't need my line art anymore, which means that I can basically turn it off. And from here I don't have to use the lasso tool anymore. The lasso tool is just merely like laying a foundation for getting a painterly look, and then from there you can start adding your brushwork and adding more detail and refining it until you find, you know, a very painterly style. When it comes to painting, everything has to do with shapes and how you use shapes, and trying an exercise like this will really help you improve, like using correct shapes or using pleasing shapes that, you know, feel good to you and are subjectively interesting and pleasing, and usually most of the time they will become more pleasing because of that. And just to reiterate, this can work for any style, by the way. This doesn't have to be like for this whimsical style that I'm showing you right here. This can work for any type of style when you want to add more painterly touch to your drawings and designs. If you look at something like Dishonored, it's all based on shapes. It starts with a rough line drawing and then everything else is shapes. So you can literally achieve this in any style. All right, there we go. Just a very simple, quick example of how you can create a little bit more of a painterly feeling by just using shape. Try it in your artwork and see if it helps, and let me know. Happy learning.
common anatomy mistakes that you guys should not still be making. So you just started learning figure drawing and you're experimenting with gesture, line of action, etc., etc. Congratulations, you're about to hit a canon event. Yep, the gummy rib cage. The gummy rib cage, a rib cage that bends, twists, compresses, and or stretches. Now, it's true your rib cage expands and contracts a little when you're breathing, but understand that even what I've drawn here is an exaggeration. To understand why gummy ribs is wrong, I'll need to give you an intense, well-researched biology lesson. Your body is made of two primordial elements: bones that don't squish, and goo that does. Your rib cage and pelvis fall into the first category, while your muscles, fat, and organs fall into the second. For the purposes of illustration from imagination, treat your rib cage and pelvis like they're made of iron. They don't bend and they don't break. Also remember that there's a part of your midsection where your spine is the only bone keeping you upright, which means it's mostly goo. Some of us have more goo than others. Make sure that if a character is bending or twisting, you're reflecting that in the goo. A good principle to remember is squash and stretch, which you should definitely look up in your free time, but I gotta keep it moving. To explain it really quickly though, when one side of your body is stretched, another will appear compressed. That's not a law, by the way, that's just a great way to add a little pop and anatomical accuracy to your drawing. Now, don't that look better? Ain't that better? Now, just as an aside, I recognize this ribcage is a little bendy, but also I'm drawing through a camera. And also, shut the up. Now look, I know I'm joking and treating this all like common sense, but when you're a beginner, nothing is common sense. You're gonna get frustrated. Just don't get too frustrated. Remember to keep practicing every day, and you're gonna keep finding those monkey brain mistakes you're making. Most importantly, for my monetization, make sure you're coming back and watching this video over and over and over again, and share it with your also idiot friends that are still blissfully ignorant of their errors. Who knows, maybe if you all watch it enough times, you'll stop making those